Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, we know we live in strange times when the Mayor of Messines Road, old Double Dipton over there, is the person upholding probity on the national government side. Because that's what's going on today. Stephen Joyce and Bill English are at war for the attention of their daddy, John Key. They're at war for him. We have the surly middle child, Bill English, who today at the Select Committee could not have run further away from the Sky City deal. It had nothing to do with him. He wasn't part of the negotiations as he desperately tries to cling on to the last scrap of fiscal credibility. And then over there is the problem older child, Stephen Joyce, wanting to go out there and do deals with everybody, wanting to protect the deal that he did. You certainly look a lot older than he does. Trying to do deals, not you, Mr Speaker, trying to do deals out there. Well, what we have to say on this side of the House is that the government's chickens have come home to roost on Sky City. This brings together everything that is wrong with this government. Cronyism, incompetence and lack of concern for the social harm that they will cause. $130 million extra up for Sky City. What could that be used for, Mr Speaker? It could buy 500 state houses or build 500 state houses. Instead, it's going in corporate welfare from Stephen Joyce to the people that he got done over by in a deal, and Bill English knows that. And this from the government. This from the government that's meant to be the great negotiators, the great managers of our economy. And here we have a deal for what now we know was a $402 million convention centre, not this whole other convention centre that's been talked about now. A $402 million convention centre that was meant to be free to the taxpayer, and straight away, Stephen Joyce has done over. But that's no surprise, Mr Speaker. Coming from the man who contracted a defective payroll system in NovaPay, and his solution to that? Buy it. Buy the thing. Buy the thing. The brilliant negotiation skills of Stephen Joyce, that when he contracts a defective payroll system, his solution is to buy it. And that is this government's track record. They do a deal with Rio Tinto. They spend $30 million of taxpayers' money, and there's not a guarantee of one single extra job or one job guaranteed for the long term. That's the kind of economic development that this government puts forward. Every time they get themselves in a negotiation, be it with Chorus, be it with MediaWorks, Mr Joyce's friendly old company, they get done over, and the taxpayer of New Zealand gets done over. And it is time for this government to front up to its failures to negotiate deals on behalf of the taxpayer, or to actually think of the best interests of the taxpayer. Mr Speaker, the Finance Minister has just spoken in rosy terms about the economy, but it's important to dig in to the promises that have been made. And the promises have been made by this government year in, year out, is that we are on our way to surplus. And every single time, Mr Speaker, we do not see that surplus. We know that Bill English will come to this House with a budget in May where he'll fiddle the figures again, he'll fudge the numbers one more time, he'll make sure that New Zealanders pay more in their ACC than they need to, he'll make sure that the money's shifted about so it looks like there's a surplus. But that's it. That's the one-trick pony that we have in a finance minister, because there's no plan to diversify the economy. There's no plan for long-term growth in this economy beyond the Christchurch rebuild. This is what John Key and Bill English have brought to New Zealand. But at the same time, Mr Speaker, the level of debt grows. Now, of course, debt was going to grow out of the global financial crisis, but the extent of borrowing by this government outstrips any government in New Zealand's history. Since they got into office, they have borrowed $1 million an hour, every day that they have been in government. $1 million an hour, every day that they've been in government. And they tell us they're the responsible fiscal managers. They tell us we don't know how to run the economy. We ran surpluses. That finance minister hasn't run one. And he borrows $1 million an hour every hour. More than that, Mr Speaker, $10 million a day in interest. $10 million a day in interest being paid out on behalf of the taxpayer by a government that doesn't have a plan to grow the economy, by a government that doesn't know how to negotiate a good deal for the taxpayer and spends its time doing dodgy deals with its mates. That is the legacy of this government. And if extra money does come in for the Sky City Convention Centre, that will be the political epitaph of Stephen Joyce and John Key. The wide boys from Auckland up against Bill English and Jerry Brownlee from down south. They know it's not working. And Bill English sat in the select committee today and he said his preferred option was to walk away from the Sky City deal, to walk away. So watch this space. Watch this space to see if it's Bill English or Stephen Joyce that wins the day with John Key. If it's Stephen Joyce, it's testament to the fact that this government can't negotiate a deal and is more interested in covering its political backside than it is in doing what's right for New Zealanders. Mr. Speaker, the unemployment figures came out last week and they made very sobering reading. Up to 5.7%. And they laugh, but they're up everywhere else around the world. In countries we like to compare ourselves to, unemployment goes down, but not under this government's watch. But within those figures, Mr. Speaker, are some very instructive lessons. In Wanganui today, there are 9% of people unemployed. That's more now than in Northland at 8.5%, 8% in Gisborne. It's the regions of New Zealand that are being neglected by this government. It's the people who work hard in the small businesses in those towns who know that the government is not there to support them. Stephen Joyce likes to fiddle the figures, wave around his charts, have his laminated cards on his desk, but the reality is, for the life of those people in Wanganui, they know that unemployment is rising. Any trip down the main street of Wanganui today would tell Mr. Joyce that those shops have shut. You can play the game of trying to guess what shop used to be there because the regions of New Zealand are being neglected by this government and unemployment is growing. And speaking of Wanganui, 46,000 people in New Zealand more in New Zealand are unemployed than were when National took office. That's more than the population of Wanganui. 46,000 extra people unemployed. And years after John Key and Bill English declared the global financial crisis over, there has not been an improvement in the lives of many New Zealanders. Whatever economic growth there might be out there is not being shared fairly in this country. And we know that as the gap between the rich and the rest grows. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we want to give priority to the issues that New Zealanders are talking to us about, to grow sustainable jobs. And I can tell that side of the House that as we've been going around on the Future of Work Commission, the main piece of feedback we're getting is that National's not interested. They're not interested in looking ahead to the kind of decent, sustainable jobs that New Zealanders want. They're not interested in making sure that people are getting the skills and training for those future jobs. And the small business people especially are saying they're welcoming Andrew Little's words that small business people will be at the centre of Labour's policy because they're not seeing that from National. They want more skilled staff. They want fewer compliance costs and the Labour Party will be delivering to them on that. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we believe that it is time for a conversation in New Zealand about how we ensure decent, sustainable work with growing wages for New Zealanders that reduces inequality. That is our focus, and this government is failing to deliver in that area.